At Hope Memorial Hospital, lives intersect every day. Still, few encounters are as transformative as that of Dr. Matthew Cole, a brilliant black trauma surgeon, and Zaria Hayes, a compassionate white nurse known for her courage and resilience. Both are healers in their ways, mending broken bodies and offering solace to the weary. But their love story is set against a modern backdrop of subtle biases and societal pressures that challenge their bond. As they navigate the highs and lows of hospital life, Matthew and Zaria discover that love can be the most potent healing force. Can their connection withstand the scrutiny of a world still struggling to embrace equality? Together, they'll learn that healing extends far beyond medicine. It's about breaking barriers and choosing love, no matter the odds. Hope Memorial Hospital thrived as a beacon of cutting-edge medicine and compassion. Its corridors were alive with the sound of rushing gurneys, ringing pagers, and whispered prayers. Here, Matthew Cole, a trailblazing trauma surgeon, had recently taken charge of the emergency department. His precision and poise under pressure had earned him accolades. Still, his journey as a black doctor in a predominantly white medical world had been anything but easy. Zaria Hayes was the heart of the ER. Known for her radiant smile and tireless dedication, she brought warmth to the often cold, clinical hospital environment. For Zaria, nursing wasn't just a profession, it was her calling. She believed in treating patients with dignity, no matter their background, and her compassion extended to everyone she encountered. Their first meeting was intense. A young boy had been rushed into the ER after a playground accident, his injuries severe. Matthew's commanding voice directed the team as they fought to stabilize him. "Zaria, I need suction and pressure on this wound. Now!" Matthew ordered, his tone steady but urgent. Zaria didn't hesitate, her hands moving with practiced precision. The room was tense, but she matched Matthew's calm energy. Together, they worked seamlessly, saving the boy's life. After the chaos settled, Matthew looked at Zaria with a hint of admiration. "You kept your cool. That's not easy in a case like this." Zaria shrugged, a soft smile tugging at her lips. "It's all about the team, Doctor. Cole, and you're not so bad yourself." Later that evening, as Matthew reviewed the day's cases, he couldn't stop thinking about Zaria. Her strength, her compassion. They left an impression. Zaria, too, found herself replaying the moments in the trauma bay, feeling an unfamiliar flutter in her chest. Outside the hospital, their collaboration didn't go unnoticed. Colleagues whispered, some with curiosity, others with thinly veiled judgment. Matthew and Zaria were aware of the unspoken challenges their bond might face, but in that moment, neither was willing to dwell on them. Their story had begun a story of love, resilience, understanding, and breaking free from the constraints of a divided world. As the weeks passed, Matthew and Zaria's bond grew more assertive. Their shared late-night conversations in the hospital courtyard became a comforting ritual, offering a reprieve from the emotional toll of their work. Yet, outside the hospital walls, the world's harsh realities were not so easily ignored. One evening, after an incredibly taxing shift, Zaria hesitated as she packed her things. Matthew noticed. "What's on your mind?" he asked, his tone gentle. "I was thinking about the gala next week," she said. "The hospital's fundraiser." Matthew nodded. "Are you going?" "I don't know. It's hard to feel comfortable in those settings. Sometimes it feels like, no matter what we achieve, people still look at us as less than." Matthew frowned, his jaw tightening. "You've experienced that here?" Zaria gave a half-smile, trying to brush it off. "Not directly, but you notice things. The way some people hesitate to trust you with their care. The sideways glances." Matthew understood all too well. As a black doc, the days that followed their initial collaboration were filled with brief yet meaningful encounters. Matthew and Zaria often worked side by side in the chaos of the ER. They operated in perfect sync, whether it was calming a distraught patient or tackling a high-pressure situation. One particularly hectic evening, a mass casualty incident brought in dozens of patients. The ER was a frenzy of activity, and Matthew and Zaria worked tirelessly, barely pausing for a moment's breath. As the last patient was wheeled out for surgery, Matthew leaned against the wall, his exhaustion evident. "You know," Zaria said, handing him a bottle of water, "you could take a break once in a while. Even superheroes need rest." Matthew chuckled, his usual stoic demeanor softening. "I'll rest when everyone is safe. What about you? You've been on your feet longer than I have." She shrugged. "It comes with the territory. But you're right, I could use a breather." For the first time, they stepped outside together into the hospital courtyard. The night air was incredible, and the distant hum of the city provided a soothing backdrop. They sat silently, momentarily, the weight of their responsibilities lifting. "Why did you become a nurse?" Matthew asked, genuinely curious. Zaria smiled, her eyes reflecting both pride and a hint of sadness. "My mom, she was a nurse too. She always said it wasn't just about healing wounds, it was about healing hearts. She passed away when I was 16, but her words stuck with me." Matthew nodded, his gaze thoughtful. "She'd be proud. You're incredible at what you do." Zaria felt her cheeks flush. "What about you? Why medicine?" "My grandmother," Matthew replied. "She raised me in a small town where healthcare was practically non-existent. Watching her struggle made me want to change that. For her, and for people like her. She didn't live to see me graduate, but she's the reason I'm here." At that moment, something shifted between them. They weren't longer colleagues, two people with shared values and a deepening connection. As they returned to the ER, Matthew couldn't help but notice how Zaria carried herself. Strong, compassionate, and unapologetically herself. On the other hand, Zaria was drawn to Matthew's quiet determination and the kindness that shone through his eyes. Neither said it aloud, but they knew this was the start of something extraordinary. Tor. He had faced his fair share of prejudice. Despite his accolades, he often had to prove himself twice as challenging to gain the same level of respect. "That's their ignorance," Matthew said firmly. "You're one of the best nurses here, Zaria. Anyone who doubts that is blind." Zaria smiled at his words, but changed the subject. "What about you? Are you going to the gala?" "I wasn't planning on it," Matthew admitted. "I'm not exactly a fan of tuxedos and small talk." "Maybe we could both go," Zaria said, surprising herself with the suggestion. "If you're there, it might not feel so bad." Matthew met her gaze, a flicker of something unspoken passing between them. "All right," he said after a moment. "We'll brave it together." When the night of the gala arrived, Zaria nervously adjusted her dress in front of the mirror. She wasn't used to this side of life, the glamour, the scrutiny. Matthew, meanwhile, stood awkwardly in his perfectly tailored suit, waiting for Zaria outside the venue. When she stepped out of the car, Matthew's breath caught. "You look stunning," he said, his voice genuine. Zaria felt her cheeks warm. "You don't look too bad yourself, Doctor." Matthew. As they walked into the grand ballroom, the stares began. Some were admiring, others less so. It was clear that their presence together was making a statement, even if unintentional. The gala had marked a shift in Matthew and Zaria's relationship, but neither had fully addressed it. Their connection was undeniable, but they were cautious, knowing that stepping into something more could complicate their professional lives and invite judgment from those around them. One late night, the hospital was quieter than usual. Zaria was seated in the break room, sipping her tea, when Matthew walked in, holding a stack of patient files. He paused when he saw her, a tired but warm smile spreading. "Mind if I join you?" he asked. "Of course not," Zaria said, gesturing to the chair across her. For a moment, they sat in comfortable silence, the hum of the vending machine filling the room. Then Matthew broke the quiet. "Zaria, have you ever thought about how complicated all of this is?" She tilted her head, studying him. "What do you mean?" "This," he said, motioning between them. "Whatever this is. The connection we have." Zaria set her cup down, her heart racing. "I think about it all the time," she admitted. Matthew nodded, his expression thoughtful. "I don't want to make things harder for you. I know you've worked so hard to be where you are. The last thing I want is to give anyone a reason to question your professionalism." Zaria leaned forward, her gaze steady. "And I don't want to jeopardize everything you've achieved either. But Matthew, it's not fair to let the world's prejudices dictate how we live our lives." Her words hung in the air, and for a moment, neither spoke. Then Matthew reached across the table, gently placing his hand over hers. "You're right," he said softly. "It's not fair. And I don't want to let fear keep us from something that feels real." Zaria smiled, her eyes glistening. "Me neither." Their quiet moment was interrupted by the sound of a pager beeping. Matthew glanced at his. "Code blue in the ER," he said, standing quickly. Zaria rose with him, the weight of their conversation still lingering. "Let's go." As they rushed to the ER, the gravity of their work pulled them back into focus. Together, they stabilized the patient, working in perfect harmony as they always did. But something had changed. An unspoken understanding now existed between them, giving them strength amidst the chaos. Later, as they returned to the break room, Zaria turned to Matthew. "You know, the world might not approve of us, but I think we owe it to ourselves to try." Matthew stopped, his gaze unwavering. "I agree." Their decision wasn't made lightly, but they both knew it was worth the risk. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they were ready to face them, together. The days following Matthew and Zaria's decision to embrace their relationship were filled with joy and tension. At the hospital, their connection was subtle yet unmistakable. A fleeting glance during rounds, a quiet moment shared in the break room, or how their teamwork seemed even more seamless. But the world around them was not as understanding. One morning, Zaria arrived at work to find a note taped to her locker. It was anonymous, scrawled in harsh letters. "Keep your personal life out of the hospital. People are watching." She stared at the note, her hands trembling slightly, before crumpling it and shoving it into her bag. The sting of the words lingered, but she resolved not to let them affect her. Matthew noticed her distraction during rounds and pulled her aside after their shift. "Zaria, is everything okay? You seemed off today." She hesitated, then handed him the crumpled note. His jaw tightened as he read it, his usual calm replaced by a simmering anger. "This is unacceptable," he said firmly. "You shouldn't have to deal with this." "It's not the first time something like this has happened," Zaria admitted. "But Matthew, I don't want to make this about me. The patients come first." Matthew placed a hand on her shoulder, his voice gentle but resolute. "The patients will always come first, but so should our dignity. If we let this go, we're allowing them to dictate how we live our lives." That evening, they sat down to draft a formal complaint to the hospital administration. It wasn't just about the note. It was about fostering an environment where people from all backgrounds could work without fear of discrimination or judgment. Their decision to speak up was met with mixed reactions. While some colleagues expressed support and solidarity, others were less welcoming. Matthew overheard murmurs in the staff lounge, questioning his professionalism. Zaria noticed how some nurses avoided her in the halls. The tension reached a boiling point during a staff meeting when a senior doctor openly questioned whether personal relationships between staff members could compromise patient care. Matthew stood, his voice calm but firm. "With all due respect, the only thing compromising patient care is intolerance. We're here to save lives, not police each other's personal choices." His words resonated with many in the room, and a few staff members clapped. But the atmosphere remained charged. Later that night, Zaria doubted whether their fight was worth the cost. "Maybe we should just keep our distance," she said quietly, as they sat together on her porch. Matthew took her hand, his gaze steady. Zaria, love isn't something we should have to hide. It's not wrong. And if we give in now, what does that say to everyone else facing the same struggles? We're stronger together. His conviction gave her strength, and she nodded, determined to stand by him. Their journey was far from over, but they knew they were fighting not just for their love, but for a world where love, regardless of race or background, could thrive without fear. Matthew and Zaria's decision to confront the backlash head-on sparked conversations within the hospital. Despite the challenges, their courage to stand firm in their relationship ignited a ripple of change in an institution that had long avoided addressing such issues. After receiving their formal complaint, the administration called for a meeting to discuss workplace policies and inclusion. The meeting, held in the largest conference room of the hospital, was packed with staff from every department. Some came out of curiosity, others with skepticism, and a few with genuine support for Matthew and Zaria. The hospital director, an older man known for his impartial demeanor, opened the session. "This meeting is not about pointing fingers," he began, "but about ensuring that every member of our staff feels respected and valued. We have a responsibility, not just to our patients, but to each other." Matthew was invited to speak. Dressed in his scrubs, with a steady voice and unwavering gaze, he addressed the room. "We didn't choose to make this a public issue, but the challenges we've faced made it necessary. Zaria and I didn't expect our relationship to become a statement, but it's clear that this conversation is long overdue. This is not just about us. It's about ensuring that everyone here, regardless of race, religion, or background, feels safe to be themselves." His words were met with silence at first, but then Zaria stood. She looked around the room, her voice calm but filled with emotion. "We're here to heal people. But how can we do that when we allow prejudice to fester within our own walls? We can't be the best caregivers if we're constantly afraid of judgment or hostility. Change starts with us." The room erupted into applause, but not everyone was moved. A few staff members exchanged skeptical glances, unwilling to let go of their biases. Yet the seed of change had been planted. Over the following weeks, the hospital implemented new policies promoting inclusivity. Workshops on unconscious bias were made mandatory, and anonymous reporting systems were introduced to address discrimination. These measures, though small, marked a significant step forward. Meanwhile, Matthew and Zaria continued to focus on their work. Their bond only grew stronger as they supported each other through the challenges they faced. Their story began to spread beyond the hospital walls, inspiring others in the community to confront their biases. One evening, as they walked hand in hand through the city park, Zaria turned to Matthew with a smile. "Do you think we've made a difference?" she asked. Matthew looked at her, his expression thoughtful. "I think we've started something," he replied, "and sometimes that's all it takes, a small ripple to create a wave." As they stood beneath the glow of the city lights, they realized their love had become more than just their own, a symbol of hope, courage, and unity in the face of division. Months passed, and the changes within the hospital began to take root. The conversations Matthew and Zaria had sparked now echo in break rooms, hallways, and staff meetings. While not everyone embraced the new policies or the shift in culture, many began reevaluating their biases and understanding the importance of inclusion in a profession rooted in care and compassion. Matthew and Zaria's relationship became a quiet yet powerful symbol of resilience. They never sought to be the center of attention. Still, their love story became a beacon for those facing similar struggles. Patients noticed their bond, often commenting on how their teamwork radiated warmth and trust. "You two give me hope," an elderly patient once said, her voice trembling with emotion. The world could learn a lot from people like you." The community outside the hospital also took notice. A local journalist wrote an article titled "Healing More Than Wounds: How a Doctor and Nurse Are Changing the Conversation on Racism," which quickly gained traction. The story highlighted their professional dedication, love, and the ripple effect they had created within their institution. Soon, other hospitals reached out to adopt similar inclusivity programs inspired by their journey. One day, Matthew received an invitation to speak at a medical conference. The topic is Breaking Barriers in Healthcare Through Compassion and Inclusivity. Initially hesitant, Matthew agreed, but only on the condition that Zaria would join him on stage. "This isn't just my story," he said. "It's ours." The auditorium was packed with healthcare professionals from across the country at the conference. As Matthew and Zaria stepped onto the stage, they were greeted with applause. Matthew began by sharing their experiences, the challenges, the prejudices, and the triumphs. Zaria followed, her voice steady yet impassioned, as she spoke about addressing biases within the healthcare system. "Our love didn't heal the world," Zaria concluded, "but it did heal a part of it. And if each of us does the same, chooses to confront prejudice with courage and compassion, we can create a world where love and understanding are stronger than hate." The audience rose to their feet, giving them a standing ovation. At that moment, Matthew and Zaria realized the true impact of their journey. Their story wasn't just about them, it was about inspiring others to stand up for what's right, even when it's complicated. Life returned to its steady rhythm at the hospital, but the atmosphere had shifted. Colleagues who once looked at them with skepticism now greet them with respect. The once divided staff began to work more cohesively, understanding that their shared mission to heal patients required unity, not division. One evening, as Matthew and Zaria walked out of the hospital after a long shift, they paused to admire the sunset, painting the sky in hues of gold and crimson. Zaria smiled, leaning into Matthew. "Do you ever wonder if we were meant to meet here, in this exact place and time?" she asked. Matthew wrapped an arm around her. "I think we were meant to be exactly who we are, together," he replied. "And maybe that's enough to make a difference." As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting its final light on the city, Matthew and Zaria stood hand in hand, ready to face whatever challenges the future held. Together, they were proof that love, coupled with courage and compassion, could heal even society's deepest wounds. Their story was no longer just their own. It was a testament to the power of love in transforming lives and building bridges where walls once stood. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. If this story of resilience, love, and transformation moved you, hit that like button. Subscribe to the channel for more inspiring stories that challenge barriers and showcase the power of humanity. Share this video with your friends and family to spread love, hope, and unity. Together, we can inspire change, one story at a time. See you in the next video with a new story. Till then, goodbye.